guys.
Hi.
I'm so happy to be here tonight. And I'm a little nervous. Oh gosh. I've never done anything like this. I've hosted before, but never anything like this. And they say you never forget your first. So we're all here together. I especially want to thank Ward, who invited me. I think my exact words when I read his letter were, fuck. Because I was scared, and I knew that I had to do it. And that actually brought me right where you're like, okay. Frank, did you feel the same way?
Yeah.
A little bit. Fear reminds me of something that my dad says. And my dad is full of what I like to call fatherisms. Everybody here has a dad, right?
Yes.
No demigods among us? Good. But my dad always says, he's like, Amy, fear can stand for one of two things. It can stand for fuck everything and run, or it can stand for face everything and rise. And that's when I decided tonight I want to talk about my dad. So my dad is my absolute best friend, but it did not start that way. And this story is something that, aside from my close friends and family, nobody knows. And so, in the spirit of bare your soul, stay with me. And I might get nervous. Might have a little bit of a breakdown. That's okay. We're all friends, right? There's coffee. There's booze, I hear. So before I tell the story about my dad and how we became best friends, I have to give the backstory. So bear with me a little bit. My parents met and fell in love. They lived on the same street, one at each end of the street in the mid-70s. My dad was a metal musician, rock on, spandex pants, white shoes, wristbands, the whole thing, and my mom was a cowgirl. So you could see how the natural, and I always joke that I came out somewhere like some bizarro hybrid, where I'm like, Slayer, James Taylor, you love them both. So it's awkward, it's always been awkward. They got married. They had my brother. 18 months later, they had little old me. And of course, as you can imagine, being so different as time went on, it didn't really work out. It didn't work out so hot. They were divorced about 2 years after I was born. And that was rough. And that's kind of where the story takes a turn. My family and I, my mom and I, and my sisters and my brother, we moved here to Florida. And Dad stayed in Utah. And that is when my father started drinking. Now, I'm pretty sure I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You're like, oh, this is the old alcoholic dad story. I have Lifetime. I know how the story goes. But it was different for us because it was completely kept from us. There was never any time once I ever even saw him have a drink, let alone even know that alcohol was the reason, that it was just, there was no contact. That the longest we went without really seeing each other was 6 years, which is a long time. And we'd get cards on our birthday. For my 8th birthday, I was gifted an iron. You can laugh at that, because it's a family joke now. And I joke because I'm like, I really should have known that something was not right, and that alcohol was to blame for this iron on my birthday. But in 8-year-old brain, you're like, oh, I'm wrinkly. And I need to fix this, you know? So time goes on, I go through school, I started playing guitar when I was 12, and life just has a way of moving forward. And then I got the phone call. I'll never forget it because I was 15, I was home alone, and like I said, I have 4 brothers and sisters, so when you were home alone at 15, you remember, because it's very rare when that happens. And it was my dad on the phone, and I just remember he was nervous, and I had never, we just didn't have that relationship where I could pick up, on why he was nervous. And he was just like, Amy, I have something to tell you. I am an alcoholic and I need to make amends. And I just, I should have been mad or I should have been sad, but instead I was just so relieved, and I felt like there was this bright light that came on, and And I felt like for the first time, I could actually have a chance at even understanding, because alcoholic, I could do something about that. But apathy, or not caring, you can't do anything, you can't do anything to solve it. So we started talking. And at first we talked about music because that was our common thread. That was like our common ground, and I had been learning chords started a few years earlier. I was 15, so I started when I was like 12 or 13, so I'd like call him up just because I could. And I knew he would answer, and I'd be like, do you know what a G chord is, Dad? Yeah, just learned that, puppy. Got it down. And he was so good that I'd be like calling and crying, listening to the new like Jewel album, and he'd be like, yes, Amy, yes, it is good. No, it's not good. Yes, it is good. And as we started talking, I started learning more about his story. Because the thing is that when you're a kid and you have a parent who's gone, you don't have the tools yet to try and figure out what they're going through. Because you're just a kid and you're just moving forward. And I was able to hear about what actually brought him to acknowledge that he had to change and to acknowledge that he had a problem. And at the worst of his drinking, my father, and I hate telling the story, but I'm doing it, lived under an overpass in Denver, Colorado, next to the Alpo plant. That was his bottom. Dad and I keep talking, we keep working through this, and I find myself, at this time I'm 25, and I'm on tour, and I'm in Denver, Colorado. And I'm looking for my gig, I'm arriving, I'm late, true Amy fashion, have no idea where I'm going. And I pull off on the side of the road, and I'm like checking my GPS, and I just look up, and the Alpo plant is right there. And I just lost it. I just started crying. Because in my mind, I was like, no, it wasn't enough that I would hear the stories. I needed to actually, through random circumstance, be brought back to where it's not just his bottom, that's where he decided no more. So Dad and I would keep working, keep figuring each other out, and he actually ended up moving here. He retired from his job in Seattle. He's sober this whole time, by the way, And he moves here, and he brings with him a little bit of gear. Because even though my dad hasn't played music since the 80s, you can't stop a determined gearhead. You really can't. It's in the blood, and you can leave it alone, or music for that matter, for a decade, but eventually it will come back. And I saw him, so we've got the gear, and he's living in Palm Coast, and we're starting this like home production company, and I remember the first time that he picked up my guitar, because see, Dad gave up music long before he decided to give up the drinking, because in his mind, the two had to be together. And that's a whole other story that we could do about how rock and roll and music loves people with addictions. And how the two, that's a whole blah, blah, blah. But I saw when he grabbed my guitar when he moved down here, and I remember being like, and there it is. The seed has been, he's coming back, he's coming back. Dad actually that summer ended up joining me and my band, running sound for us, and my brother went too, all the way up the East Coast, all the way from Georgia to Manhattan. And the memories that we created on that tour was completely worth 6 years of silence. And the reason I wanted to tell this story is because, like I said, my dad is my best friend. But it was not always that way. And he is the reason that I believe that people can change. And he is the reason that I believe things can change. Because if you don't believe that things can change or things can get better, what are you fucking doing here? Right? And I'm happy to announce that my dad last week celebrated 18 years of sobriety. Right? And last month, he released his second album in the last 2 years, of Bondage Itself. And it is metal as fuck. But I'm happy that we are not a family who says fuck everything and run. We are a face everything and rise type of people. That's my story. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Amy. That was amazing. That was great.